The first email came on a rainy Tuesday night, and I nearly deleted it thinking it was spam. Who the hell writes to a stranger about how glass windows can capture loneliness like a mirror, yet still let the world in? I didn't know it then, but those words would haunt me for the next 2 years. By the time I realized the anonymous sender wasn't just a bored poet, but a woman who somehow understood the cracks in my life, I was already addicted. Every morning my inbox became a heartbeat. Every evening her words curled into my chest like smoke, filling the emptiness I never admitted I had. But here's the catch. I didn't even know her name. America is loud, busy, brutal, especially in New York City where I live. People brush past you like ghosts. Friends fade into jobs, lovers fade into excuses, and all you're left with is yourself staring at your reflection in a window at midnight. So imagine this. For 2 years I built a life with someone whose face I'd never seen. And somehow she saw more of me than anyone else ever dared. The emails were intimate but never confessional. She never told me who she was, where she lived, what she looked like. But she knew me. She remembered details I'd dropped: careless, slimy hatred for cold coffee, my habit of biting pin caps, the way I once admitted I cried after watching a documentary about abandoned houses. And she always signed off the same way: keep building. At first, I thought it was just a metaphor for living, for surviving. But then she began describing buildings. Not just buildings, masterpieces. Blueprints of dreams she wanted to bring into the world. And I realized she was an architect. And not just any architect. She was the one I had followed secretly for years. The one whose work made magazines, whose designs reshaped skylines. The one I had admired from the shadows because admiration was easier than confrontation. Her name was Isabel Hayes. And she was untouchable. Or at least I thought so. The second year of the emails was when everything shifted. She wrote about loneliness. Not the poetic kind she used to dress up in glass and steel metaphors, but raw, jagged loneliness. About coming home to silence after long days. About the fear of building monuments for the world while her own heart sat empty, hollow like an unfinished hall. That was when I started falling. Not for the architect on magazine covers, but for the woman who typed in the dark, sending pieces of herself to me like fragile blueprints. But falling in love with a ghost is dangerous. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me if I said I loved someone I had never met? My friends would laugh, my mother would cry, and I would lose the only connection that still felt alive in a city that kept trying to swallow me whole. So I stayed silent. I wrote back. I gave her my days, my doubts, my fragile victories. We built something together, brick by invisible brick, until the line between fantasy and reality blurred. And then one night she asked me to meet her. It was a Sunday evening, early spring. I remember because Central Park was still muddy from melted snow, and the streets smelled like wet asphalt. She wrote, "If I don't see you now, I'll lose my courage forever. Meet me at Bryant Park. By the library steps. 7 p.m. My heart nearly stopped. I stood in front of my closet like a child, panicking over nothing and everything. What do you wear when you're meeting the woman who's been your secret oxygen for 2 years? I settled for jeans and a navy coat, simple but not careless, casual but not indifferent. I arrived 10 minutes early, clutching my phone like a lifeline. The library loomed behind me, grand and ancient, a reminder of every story ever told. I watched strangers pass by, each one a possibility. My chest hurt from how hard my heart was pounding. And then I saw her. She was taller than I imagined, with long dark hair pulled into a loose bun, strands falling around her face. Her coat was gray, sharp, elegant, the kind that whispered money and taste. But her eyes, God, her eyes. They were tired and fierce at the same time, like someone who had been carrying the weight of the world, but still refused to let it crush her. For a moment she just stood there scanning the crowd. And then our eyes locked. The world stopped. She smiled hesitant, nervous, almost shy. And I knew it was her. Isabel. My voice cracked. She nodded. And you must be the one who hates cold coffee. I laughed, but it broke halfway into a sob. And before I could stop myself, I stepped forward, closing the distance. The hug wasn't planned. It wasn't graceful. It was desperate. She smelled like rain and ink, like someone who'd been living in blueprints and late nights. Her arms were strong, her body warm, and for the first time in 2 years I felt whole. But love stories don't unfold like fairy tales. Because just when I thought I had finally found her, reality slipped between us like a blade. We sat down at a small cafe nearby, the kind that stayed open late for students and insomniacs. We ordered coffee, mine black, hers with too much sugar. The silence between us was thick, filled with every word we had written and none of the words we needed to say. Finally she spoke. I shouldn't be here. My chest tightened. Why? She stirred her coffee, avoiding my eyes. Because I'm engaged. The word hit like a brick. Engaged. It felt like the cafe walls collapsed around me, burying me alive. I forced a laugh, brittle and sharp. Then why did you write to me for 2 years? She finally looked up, and her eyes were glassy with something like regret. Because with you I could breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But instead I just sat there, my hands trembling around the coffee cup. Love isn't fair. It never is. And in that moment I hated her. I hated her for making me fall, for letting me believe in something that had no place in reality. But more than that, I hated myself. Because even then, even after the knife of her confession, I still wanted her. Still. Always. That night when I got home, I opened my inbox and found one last email from her. It read, I know I don't deserve you, but if I could build one thing in this life just for myself, it would be us. Please forgive me. I cried until the city lights blurred into rivers. But I didn't delete the email. Because even broken dreams are still dreams. The word engaged didn't just sit in the air, it screamed. Every sip of coffee tasted like ash. Every breath I took was heavier than the last. She sat across from me, fingers gripping her cup as if it were the only thing tethering her to the world. And maybe it was. I wanted to ask her a million questions, but they all tangled in my throat. Finally I managed one. Do you love her? The silence that followed was cruel. Isabel's lips parted, then closed. Her eyes flickered down at her coffee as though the sugar swirling inside might give her courage. I owe her everything, she said at last, voice low, careful. She was there when I had nothing. When my career was collapsing, when no one believed in me. She believed. She saved me. That's not love, I whispered. My voice cracked, brittle as glass. Her gaze finally lifted, locking with mine. Maybe not. But it's loyalty. And I don't know if I can betray that. The word betray slammed into me like a slap. Because wasn't I already the betrayal? 2 years of hidden words, stolen intimacy, moments she carved from her life to give to me. We had been living a secret love without ever admitting it. I pushed back my chair. The legs screeched against the cafe floor, sharp and ugly. Then why meet me at all? Her face crumpled. Because I needed to see you once. Just once. To prove to myself you're real. Her words were a knife twisting. I hated her for being selfish, but more than that, I hated myself for being willing to bleed for her. I left without another word. The city outside was a blur of headlights and neon, but none of it touched me. I walked fast, as if I could outrun the hollow ache spreading through my chest. Every step echoed the same truth. She belonged to someone else. And yet, when I got home, my inbox was waiting. There was no new email, of course. But the old ones sat there like ghosts, whispering memories into the room. Lines I had memorized by heart. Sentences that once made me smile now cut deeper than any blade. I closed my laptop and pressed my palms against my eyes until colors burst behind my lids. I wanted to forget her. I wanted to delete every trace. But I couldn't. Because love, once planted, has a way of growing no matter how much you try to starve it. Weeks passed. Spring settled into the city with a deceptive gentleness. Flowers bloomed along sidewalks, couples held hands in the park, and the world seemed determined to remind me of everything I couldn't have. I threw myself into work, into late nights at the publishing house where I edited manuscripts for authors who still believed in happy endings. Every romantic line felt like a taunt. Every declaration of love was a wound reopened. And then one afternoon I saw her again. It was by accident. I had just left the office when I spotted her across the street. Isabel, standing in front of a construction site, hard hat in hand, barking instructions to a group of contractors. Her posture was all steel, her voice commanding, her presence undeniable. But when she turned just slightly, I caught a glimpse of her profile, tired, beautiful, achingly familiar. My breath caught. I should have kept walking, pretended I hadn't seen her. But my body betrayed me. Before I knew it, I had crossed the street. She saw me instantly, and for a second, just a flicker, her face softened. "Hey," she said, almost breathless. "Hi," I replied, my voice barely audible. We stood there, two people on the edge of something dangerous, surrounded by dust and noise but caught in a silence that belonged only to us. "I didn't expect to see you," she admitted. "Neither did I." She hesitated, then glanced at the cafe across the street. "Do you have time for a coffee?" I should have said no. I should have walked away. But I nodded, because sometimes even knowing it will hurt, you still run toward the fire. The cafe was crowded, voices overlapping like tangled wires. Yet somehow in the corner booth we found, it felt like we were alone again. She looked tired, more tired than the first night we met. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrapped them around her mug. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what?" "For dragging you into this. For making you feel something I had no right to ask for." I swallowed hard. "You didn't drag me. I walked into it willingly." She gave a humorless laugh. "That doesn't make it less wrong." We sat in silence, the weight of her engagement pressing like a wall between us. But then her eyes found mine, raw and unguarded. "Do you ever think," she whispered, "that we were supposed to meet? That fate, or something, pushed us together?" Her words cracked something in me. Every day. Her hand twitched, almost as if she wanted to reach across the table. But she didn't. She stayed frozen, loyalty binding her like chains. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her, to demand why loyalty mattered more than love. But instead I whispered, "Then why not choose us?" Tears pooled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Because some choices ruin lives. And I can't be the reason someone else's world burns." Her words landed heavy, final. But I knew deep down the story wasn't over. The next time I saw her, it wasn't by accident. It was at her gallery opening. I hadn't planned to go. I told myself I wouldn't. But the night came and something inside me refused to stay home. So I dressed carefully, blending into the crowd of critics, artists, and socialites who had gathered to celebrate Isabel Hayes, the architect who was reshaping New York's skyline. The models of her new project stood on display, glass and steel rendered in miniature. People buzzed around them, sipping champagne, murmuring about brilliance. But my eyes weren't on the buildings. They were on her. She moved through the crowd with grace, shaking hands, smiling politely, but her eyes were distant. Until they landed on me. For a moment the room disappeared. It was just her and me. She excused herself from the group she was speaking to and crossed the room. "You came," she said softly. "I shouldn't have." Her lips curved, bittersweet. "Neither should I." We stood there, suspended in a bubble of tension, until a woman's voice cut through. "Isabel." We both turned. A tall brunette approached, elegant and confident, her arms slipping naturally around Isabel's waist. My stomach dropped. This was her fiancé. The woman smiled at me, polite but curious. "And you are?" Before Isabel could speak, I forced a smile and said, "Just an admirer of her work." It tasted like blood in my mouth. The fiancé's eyes softened with pride as she looked at Isabel. "She's remarkable, isn't she?" I couldn't breathe. I muttered something about needing fresh air and slipped out into the night. Outside, the city roared with life, but all I heard was silence. And all I felt was loss. Yet even then, even after standing face to face with the woman who claimed Isabel's future, I couldn't let go. Because love isn't something you choose. Chooses you. And when it does, it doesn't let go easily. And neither, I realized, would I. The rooftop was cold, the kind of chill that sneaks beneath your coat and lingers in your bones. I shouldn't have been there, I had no right to be. Yet when Isabel sent me a text that night, nothing more than "Can we talk?" I found myself climbing stairs that seemed to stretch forever, until I finally pushed open the heavy metal door and stepped into the wind. She was already there, standing at the edge, the city spread out behind her like a painting she had designed herself. Skyscrapers rose like guardians, streets glowed like rivers of light, and in the middle of it all was her Isabel Hayes, the woman who had built worlds with her hands but was still unraveling in front of me. "You came," she said without turning. Her voice carried easily through the night air, steady but laced with something fragile. "I always do," I answered, because it was the truth. She turned then, and for the first time since the cafe, I saw her without armor. No polite smiles, no professional grace, just exhaustion and longing in equal measure. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. My heart clenched. Doing what? Talking to me? Or pretending you don't feel what we both know is there? Her breath hitched, and she shook her head as though shaking away a truth she couldn't bear. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," I insisted, stepping closer. The wind tugged at my hair, the city hummed below us, but all I saw was her. "You love me. And I got Isabel, I love you too. Isn't that enough?" Her eyes closed as if my words were both salvation and curse. "I'm engaged," she reminded me, the words brittle now, breaking under their own weight. "I made promises. I can't just, yes you can," I cut in, my voice fierce. "You can choose yourself. You can choose us." Her silence stretched between us, unbearable. Then she whispered, almost broken, "If I walk away, I'll destroy her." I stepped even closer, until the space between us was nothing but breath and heartbeat. "And if you stay, you'll destroy yourself. And me with you." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world held its breath. Then, slowly, her hand lifted, trembling, as if fighting gravity itself, until her fingertips brushed mine. It was barely a touch, but it ignited something fierce and undeniable. "I don't know how to stop wanting you," she confessed. "Then don't," I breathed. Her lips parted, her eyes burned into mine, and in that instant, the rooftop wasn't cold anymore. It was fire. She kissed me. It wasn't careful or polite, it was desperate, hungry, years of words and longing crashing into one moment. My hands found her face, her body pressed against mine, and for the first time, I knew what it meant to belong. But just as quickly she pulled away, breathless, eyes wide with fear. "This is wrong," she said, voice shaking. "God, what am I doing?" "You're being honest," I told her, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "For once, you're choosing what you actually feel." Her eyes searched mine, torn between terror and desire. And then, without another word, she turned and left, the rooftop door slamming shut behind her. I stood there alone, the taste of her still on my lips, the city still burning around me. And I knew nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed were torture. I told myself to forget, to bury the memory of that kiss, but it clung to me like a brand. Every song on the radio became her. Every crowded street looked empty without her. And every night I checked my inbox, half praying for an email that never came. Until it did. 2 weeks later, a single message appeared. "I can't stop thinking about you. Meet me. Midnight. Same rooftop." My heart nearly stopped. I went. Of course I went. She was already there, pacing, her hair loose, her coat wrapped tight. When she saw me, relief washed over her face, but also terror. "I told her," she blurted before I could even speak. The world tilted. "Told her what?" "About you. About us." My breath caught. "And?" Her eyes filled with tears, shining in the city lights. She cried. She begged me to stay. She said I owed her, that I couldn't throw away everything we built. And she's right. She's been with me through everything. Her voice broke. "I feel like the worst person alive." I stepped closer, aching to hold her but afraid she'd shatter in my arms. "You're not the worst person. You're just human. You can't help who you love." Her tears spilled, and before she could hide, I reached out and wiped them gently away. She leaned into my touch, her breath trembling. "I don't know if I'm brave enough," she whispered. "You are," I said firmly. "Because the woman I've been writing to for 2 years? She's brave. She builds dreams out of nothing. She doesn't hide from the truth." Her lips quivered, her hand found mine, and this time she didn't let go. "I want you," she admitted, voice raw. "Even if it destroys me. Even if it destroys everything." And then she kissed me again. This kiss was different. Not desperate but certain. Not fire-consuming but fire-choosing where to burn. And I knew that no matter how much chaos waited, no matter who got hurt, she was mine. But love doesn't erase consequences. The next weeks were war. Her fiancé didn't let go easily. She showed up at Isabel's office, at her home, even once at my door. She begged, threatened, accused. The tabloids sniffed out whispers of a broken engagement, eager to feast on scandal. Isabel's career hung in the balance, her name tossed around like a weapon. I watched her crumble under the weight of it, yet still stand tall, still fight. And every night when she came to Meekshostet, scared, trembling, I held her together. We loved in stolen hours, in whispered promises, in touches that felt like rebellion. And through it all the guilt burned her. "I ruined her life," she said one night, her head on my chest. "No," I whispered, kissing her hair. "You chose your own." And maybe for the first time that was enough. The night the engagement officially ended, Isabel showed up at my door soaked in rain, her hair clinging to her face, her hands shaking. "She's gone," she said simply. I pulled her inside, wrapped her in my arms. She was crying not from regret, but from release. From finally stepping into the life she wanted, not the one she was told to live. And as I held her as the storm raged outside, I realized something. The anonymous emails weren't just words. They were blueprints. And what we were building together wasn't fragile anymore. It was a home. The weeks after Isabel ended her engagement were anything but easy. The city didn't forgive her quickly. The story spread, rising architect ends engagement for secret lover. The words stung every time I saw them printed in glossy magazines or plastered across online blogs. Some called her reckless, others painted me as the villain, the thief of a happy ending. We walked into coffee shops and felt eyes burning holes in our backs. But Isabel held my hand anyway. That, more than anything, gave me strength. There were nights when she would break, when the weight of the whispers threatened to crush her. I'd find her curled up on the couch, glass of wine in hand, staring at nothing. "I've built towers," she said one evening, voice small, "but I don't know how to build a life that doesn't collapse." I knelt in front of her, taking her face gently between my hands. "Then let's build it together. No blueprints, no deadlines. Just us." Her eyes filled, but this time with something softer than fear. Hope. Our first real test came from her family. Her parents invited us to dinner, the kind that wasn't really an invitation but a demand. Isabel dreaded it. She hadn't told them the truth about Usenly, that her engagement had ended. They were furious already, blaming her for humiliating them in front of friends and colleagues. We arrived at their suburban home in Connecticut on a chilly Sunday evening. The air smelled like roasted chicken and judgment. Her mother barely hugged her. Her father's handshake was stiff. And when I was introduced, "This is her friend," the word sliced like glass. Dinner was a battlefield. Her parents asked pointed questions, spoke in coded disappointment, avoided my eyes. At one point her mother said, "It's not too late to fix this, Isabel. She'll take you back if you just apologize." I waited for Isabel to shrink, to fold like she once might have. But instead she set her fork down, her voice steady. "No, Mom. She won't. And I wouldn't go back even if she did." The table went silent. Her father's jaw tightened. "So this is really what you want?" His eyes flicked toward me, sharp, accusing. Isabel reached across the table, took my hand in hers and laced our fingers together. "Yes. This is who I love. This is my future." The words hung heavy, but they were unshakable. And for the first time I saw her free. The months that followed weren't a fairy tale. We argued. About work, about the stress, about my fear of always being the other woman in people's eyes. There were nights I stormed out, only to come back hours later because I couldn't stand the thought of sleeping without her. But every fight ended the same, with us holding each other, whispering apologies, choosing to stay. Love isn't perfect. It's raw, messy, inconvenient. But it's also relentless. And ours was relentless. By summer, Isabel's career stabilized. The scandal faded into background noise, and the city remembered her for her buildings again, not her broken engagement. She invited me to her office one afternoon to show me a new project, a community library designed with wide windows and soft light. A place meant to welcome, not intimidate. "It's for us," she said, her hand brushing mine as we stood over the model. "A space that says love doesn't need to hide." I swallowed past the lump in my throat. "It's beautiful." She looked at me then, eyes shining, and whispered, "So are you." That fall we moved in together. Her apartment became ours, walls lined with both her blueprints and my books. We painted the kitchen one Saturday morning, arguing over colors until we were laughing and splattered in blue paint. We cooked dinner side by side, burned more meals than we got right, and kissed while smoke alarms blared. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't perfect. But it was home. One evening, almost exactly 2 years after her first anonymous email, we sat on the steps of the New York Public Library, the same place we had met. The city buzzed around us, but in that moment, it felt like it was just us again. Two souls who had found each other against all odds. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket and handed it to me. I unfolded it, expecting one of her sketches. Instead, it was the very first email she had ever sent me. The one about windows and loneliness. I kept it, she admitted softly, because even then, before I knew you, before I admitted anything to myself, you already felt like home. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed the paper to my chest and laughed through the ache in my throat. You're still terrible at confessions, you know that? She grinned, pulling me close until our foreheads touched. Then let me try again. And right there on those stone steps where our story began, she kissed me soft, sure, endless. For the first time, it wasn't a secret. It was simply love. We didn't erase the past. We didn't pretend the pain hadn't shaped us. But we built something new, brick by fragile brick, until it stood stronger than any tower Isabel had ever designed. And in the quiet moments when her hand found mine in the dark, when laughter filled the kitchen, when she whispered my name like it was both prayer and promise, I knew. Those anonymous emails weren't just the beginning of our story. They were the map that led us here. To each other. To forever. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.